Welcome back to the Forgotten Room, where we uncover the stories left buried beneath comfort and routine. If you're drawn to tales that reveal the rot behind the rose garden, make sure to subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments, and stay with us as we explore a story that will test your faith in kindness itself. Tonight, we turn our gaze to the quiet town of Reverie, nestled in the woods of New Hampshire, where a woman revered as a savior lived among them for almost 20 years. They called her the town doctor, the angel in a white coat. The one who never charged a cent, never turned anyone away, never raised her voice. She healed their children. She held their hands in hospital rooms. She arrived during blizzards when ambulances couldn't. And for a long time, no one asked what lay beneath her home, not until the rain exposed it. This is not the story of a monster that howls or a killer that stalks. This is the story of someone who knew how to listen, who made you feel seen, who gave you hope, and then took it piece by piece without ever raising suspicion. This is the story of Dr. Mary Ann Alder. They say she arrived on a Wednesday. It was the end of summer in 2004 when a dusty blue Volvo pulled into the gravel driveway at the edge of Reverie's eastern boundary, just beyond the pine grove, where fog settled every morning like breath on a cold mirror. She'd bought the old Cartwright estate, a crumbling Queen Anne-style house half smothered by ivy and shadow. Most people in town thought it was condemned. But within weeks, the house came alive again. Roof tiles were replaced. The garden was cleared. The porch lights flickered on. And then came the sign, "Free Clinic, open Wednesdays through Sundays. No insurance needed." She introduced herself simply Mary Ann Alder, retired physician, Boston General. She said she wanted to give back, that the world had given her enough, that she needed quiet, peace, a purpose. People were skeptical at first, as they often are with those who give freely. But then the miracles began. Maggie Harmon, the town's librarian, slipped on the ice outside her home one January and shattered her hip. The hospital ambulance was 40 minutes out. Mary Ann arrived in 10. She stabilized her, kept her warm, and rode with her the whole way. 2 months later, when Maggie came home, she found a new set of safety rails already installed, no charge. Just a folded note on her kitchen counter. No one should fall twice. M.A. A boy with chronic asthma who couldn't afford treatment. Mary Ann gave him a year's supply of medication. A single mother with a seizure disorder. She not only treated her but trained her 9-year-old daughter in first aid. A man dying of pancreatic cancer. She sat with him every evening reading aloud until he passed. It wasn't long before she became a fixture. Reverie's angel in white. She refused money, declined awards, and never missed a house call. People described her as kind, measured, and deeply present. She remembered birthdays. She sent handwritten notes after surgeries. She showed up at funerals and never asked for recognition. It was as if Mary Ann Alder had found her calling in Reverie, and in return the town wrapped itself around her like a second skin. "She saved my wife's life," said Sheriff Bill Hendrickson. Twice. Once from a ruptured appendix and once from a deep depression after our son died. I don't know where we'd be without her. But Mary Ann never sought intimacy. She was always there, but never in. She didn't attend the July parades. She never joined church service. She kept no pets, no partner, no visitors. And no one, not once in 17 years, ever made it past her first floor. Her home was immaculate antique furniture, hand-stitched curtains, polished oak floors. But the staircase was roped off. The door to the basement had a keypad lock. And when asked about it, Mary Ann would smile softly and say, "Just old pipes and dust. Nothing worth seeing." And the town, out of gratitude, reverence, or perhaps willful blindness, never pressed. Because why would they? Why would you question the only person who ever showed up without being asked? Why would you suspect the one person who held your grandmother's hand as she slipped away, who kept your children healthy, who knew how you took your tea and asked about your arthritic knee, of anything except goodness? In Reverie, people believed in Mary Ann the way they believed in spring returning each year. Quietly, faithfully, unquestionably. And that's how it begins. Not with a scream in the woods or a trail of blood in the snow, but with warm hands, gentle words, and a reputation so spotless no one thought to look under the floorboards. But the rain always comes. And when it did, Reverie learned that beneath kindness there can be calculation, and beneath healing hands the cold metal of surgical certainty. They said she never lost a patient. Whether it was a sprained wrist or a hemorrhaging wound, she treated them with the same unwavering calm. Marianne Alder became more than a doctor in reverie. She was a ritual, a certainty, like Sunday bells or the changing leaves in autumn. She drove an old sedan with a white first aid cross painted on the side, her own doing. She always parked it just outside the clinic, tucked behind the garden where marigolds grew year-round. It didn't matter if it was midnight or a blizzard or a town emergency if you called, she answered. And she came alone. "I don't know how she did it," said Reverend Clay Morris. "There was one night I'd just come back from hospice and my wife had this episode, collapsed on the kitchen floor. I didn't know who else to call. Marianne was there in 5 minutes. She had this little black case no bigger than a lunchbox, but somehow she pulled a defibrillator from it, like Mary Poppins. She brought my wife back, just like that. And then she stayed, all night. There are dozens of stories like that, hundreds even. The woman who caught her daughter having a seizure behind the school. The boy who sliced his leg open on barbed wire during a dare and couldn't stop the bleeding. The teenager who overdosed, found in the back of a truck behind the gas station. Marianne was always the first to arrive. Sometimes before anyone had even called, she knew. And people mistook that intuition for kindness, for divine timing. But looking back, it felt more like orchestration, like surveillance. Still, no one questioned her. How could they? She'd healed the scars the local clinic couldn't touch. She was the reason some people in Reverie were still alive to tell their story. And she kept records, meticulous ones. Folders labeled in her neat cursive handwriting, color-coded by condition date and recurrence. She had better files than the local hospital. More accurate medical histories than the town's insurance office. She remembered everything, said school principal Sarah Levin. If a student had allergies, she'd know it. If a parent was undergoing treatment, she'd check in discreetly, respectfully. She carried this little leather-bound notebook everywhere, always updated it after visits, always. We used to joke she had a second brain in her pocket. And yet Marianne never asked for help, not once. She had no staff, no volunteers, no apprentices. She ran her clinic herself, stocked it with supplies ordered through obscure catalogs or delivered through private couriers. She declined medical interns from the nearby university. When asked why, she'd smile and say, "Too many cooks ruin the remedy." To those who insisted on helping, especially young people eager to learn, she offered a gentle but firm decline. Healing, she once told a nursing student, is a sacred act, and sacred things are done best in solitude. People called it old-fashioned, humble. Some called it admirable. But no one, not even those who owed her their lives, ever saw the inside of her full practice. She only allowed patients into one treatment room. No one was permitted beyond the rear hallway. And her basement off-limits. Always. Sheriff Hendrickson once joked about it at a town dinner, saying, "I keep telling Marianne she's got the only building in town I've never seen inside." She laughed, tilting her head just so. "Some things are better left unexamined, Bill. That's how we preserve the mystery." It got a good chuckle. People loved her wit, dry, sharp, and oddly evasive. But looking back, the phrase feels less like banter and more like a warning, one that no one heard. Over the years, Marianne's clinic treated well over 400 residents. She filled prescriptions, administered vaccines, ran blood work, even performed minor surgeries when ambulances were delayed. It became commonplace to say, "Just go see Marianne." Her presence allowed Reverie to remain insulated, separate from the chaos of hospitals, insurance bureaucracy, and urban anxiety. She was their human safety net. But beneath the surface, certain patterns began to form. They were so subtle, so quiet, that no one noticed. Certain patients, the town's most vulnerable, never seemed to follow up. Transient teenagers, runaways, seasonal workers, immigrants with uncertain status. They came through town, briefly sought help, and then disappeared. No one followed up. No one remembered. Because in small towns, memory is reserved for those who stay. And Marianne. She didn't mention them, didn't record them, not in the public logs, not in the town's shared databases. Her records were spotless but incomplete. Only later would investigators find the gaps, the names that should have been there. The charts never filed, the medications never logged. But in 2016, 2017, and into 2019, no one noticed. Because Dr. Marianne Alder was a saint. Because she always had the answer. Because sometimes goodness blinds more completely than cruelty. And Reverie, like many towns before it, had grown addicted to her light. No one saw the shadows behind her until it was far too late. It started with a shadow in a ledger. Her name was Elle Moran, a third-year medical student from Hawthorne University, placed in reverie for rural residency experience. She was polite, diligent, eager in that fresh-faced way city students often are when they come to small towns thinking they'll make a difference. Her placement wasn't under Dr. Marianne Alder. Marianne didn't take students, remember, but rather under the county clinic 3 miles outside town. The clinic's files were digital linked to the regional medical database. It was there, while updating flu vaccination records, that Elle noticed a mismatch. A child listed only as Mateo, age 6, had been brought in 2 weeks prior for a deep puncture wound. Elle remembered the case because the clinic never treated him. He'd been redirected to Dr. Alder's office for immediate care. The record showed a note referred to Alder critical bleeding, no ambulance available. But when Elle looked up the follow-up record, there was nothing. No vaccine record, no entry in Alder's shared treatment summaries, no pharmacy activity, no local school enrollment under that name, no parents who'd inquired. She asked the head nurse, who shrugged. Probably just a traveler. Some families pass through here with nothing but a name and a prayer. Wouldn't there be some trace, a discharge note? Consent form? Again a shrug. If Marianne took him, she handled it her way. She's got her own filing system, always has. The remark nagged at Elle, not because of suspicion, not yet, but because of the inconsistency. In med school, you're taught to document everything. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. Elle's professors drilled that into them like gospel, so she tried asking Marianne directly. It was a rainy morning when she knocked on the side door of the Alder clinic, not the public entrance, but the staff door. Marianne opened it in a navy cardigan and gloves. She smelled faintly of rosewater and bleach. "Good morning," Marianne said. "You're Elle, yes? The one from Hawthorne?" Elle smiled. "Yes, ma'am. Sorry to intrude, I just had a quick question about a patient, a child named Mateo, referred to you 2 weeks ago." Marianne blinked once, a slow assessing blink. "Mateo?" "Yes. I can't find a follow-up entry." "Ah." Marianne tilted her head. "He was treated, bandaged, left with his mother the next morning. I sent them on their way with a supply of antibiotics. They were just passing through. Do you have that in your records?" "For cross-entry, I'm old-fashioned, dear. Still use paper for the temporary ones. I'll send it over." Elle nodded, thanked her, and left. The records never came. A week passed, then 2, then a month. Elle moved on, rotated through other departments, but the thought stayed. She began watching patterns casually at first, then methodically. And she saw more gaps. A woman named Dana L. referred for post-surgical dressing changes. Gone. A teen girl named Unknown admitted after a car crash just outside of town. No follow-up. An older man brought in with respiratory distress by a delivery driver said he'd collapsed in the parking lot. Marianne had taken him in. No records, no death notice, nothing. Elle made a private list. 12 names, then 17. She tried asking again. Once. Marianne didn't answer the door that time. Her assistant, a man Elle had never seen before, pale and polite and wrong, somehow opened it and said Dr. Alder was unavailable, and the door closed. Elle brought her concerns to the county clinic supervisor. She was dismissed. "Dr. Alder has served this community for 30 years without complaint," the director said. "You're here for 4 months. Don't overstep." But the concern was no longer academic. Something was wrong. Elle returned to the digital files and began comparing them to Marianne's public logs, the ones she submitted quarterly to the local board. There was a mismatch, not huge, not scandalous on paper, but real. Between 2015 and 2020, over 70 patients listed as treated at Alder's clinic were never entered into any secondary system. No follow-up referrals, no insurance codes, no school or employment or death records. It was as if they'd passed through a hole in the town's memory. No one noticed because those patients were the ones who didn't belong. Migrant laborers, displaced people, women from the shelter, the overlooked, and Marianne's sainted solitary. Marianne had been their only point of contact. In a private journal entry, Elle wrote, "I think I've made a mistake coming here. These people trust her too much, and I'm starting to believe that trust is what she's been feeding on." Elle found her not through the clinic, not through the local news, but through an old comment on an archived blog post. It was buried beneath an article titled Reverie's Healing Hands, a profile of Dr. Marianne Alder. The post was from 2011. Glowing. Reverent. It praised Marianne's commitment, her late-night house calls, her ability to sense illness before it took root. But it was the comment dated 2014 that caught Elle's attention. You should ask what happened to the girl in the pink shirt. Dr. Alder never called it in. No one ever did. But I remember. A.H. Elle searched voter rolls, then property records. There was only one A.H. in Reverie back then. Adelaide Harper, a former columnist for the Hollow County Gazette. She found Adelaide living on the edge of town in a moss-covered trailer tucked behind a line of sugar maples. The mailbox was half-eaten by rust, the steps uneven, but inside the place was orderly, meticulous even. Adelaide opened the door wearing a sweatshirt that read, "Journalists never die, we just go out of print." "You're either lost," she said, "or curious." Elle introduced herself, hesitating at the threshold. I think we've both noticed the same thing." At first, Adelaide didn't let her in. She stepped outside instead, lighting a cigarette with hands that trembled slightly, not from age but from memory. "She's still doing it?" Adelaide asked, exhaling smoke through her nose. Elle nodded. "I don't have proof. Just gaps, missing files, patients no one remembers." Adelaide gave a dry laugh. "Oh, honey, that is the proof. You just don't know it yet." Inside her living room was lined with folders. Not boxes, not cabinets. Just stacks of tan hand-labeled folders. Dates, names, map coordinates, notes scribbled in tight looping cursive. And at the center of it all, a black leather notebook. Worn. Elastic bands snapped. Corners dog-eared and fragile. "This," Adelaide said, laying it down like scripture, "is every name I ever wrote down that passed through Marianne Alder's hands and didn't come back out." Elle sat slowly, staring at the pages. Each line was dated. Some had question marks. Some had annotations. No school re-entry. No death certificate. Truck still parked at old gas station. "Where did you get all this?" Elle asked, awed and unnerved. Adelaide took a drag of her cigarette. "I paid attention." Adelaide had been a rising journalist once. She'd won a regional award for a 2002 investigation into chemical runoff from a local manufacturer. She'd taken down a corrupt councilman in 2005. But in 2008, she began reporting on the Alder Clinic, not critically at first. Just questions, inconsistencies, gaps. That was the beginning of her disappearance, not literal but social. They called her jealous, bitter, accused her of hating Marianne for stealing the town's love. Letters were pulled, funding dried up. Her editor offered her a buyout with a warning, "You can't go against the light in a place this dark." So she stopped writing publicly, but she didn't stop watching. "I don't know what she is," Adelaide said, "but I know what she does. She chooses them, the ones no one will miss, the ones who won't be counted." "Why?" Elle asked. "For what?" Adelaide shrugged. "To make room, to stay pure, to cleanse the weak. Hell, maybe just because she can." "I gave up trying to define the why a long time ago. The how, though. That's what keeps me up." She flipped to a page, a sketch of the clinic's layout, basement notes, deliveries that didn't match the town's inventory, chemicals, sealed boxes, patients sent in and never recorded again. That night, Adelaide showed Elle something few had ever seen: a photograph, dated 1996, faded Polaroid. A girl maybe 10 years old sitting on the clinic steps, pink shirt, skinny knees, barefoot, smile soft but forced. She came into town with her uncle, Adelaide whispered. He was a traveler. She had a fever. Marianne took her in. Did she die? Adelaide looked away. No death record, no burial, no missing person report. And her uncle was found dead 3 towns over weeks later. Overdose, or so they said. What was her name? Adelaide stared down at the photo. She didn't say it. That's the part that haunts me. By the end of the night, Elle had copied 5 pages from the notebook. She asked if she could take the whole thing. Adelaide shook her head. If anything happens to me, she said, then you carry it next. She placed the notebook in a tin lockbox under the floorboard and said, "Come back in a week. If I'm not here, don't knock again." Elle had been to the Alder Clinic hundreds of times, but she had never seen the basement. There was no elevator, no labeled stairwell, no fire escape map indicating a lower level. But Adelaide's notebook had diagrams drawn from patient rumors, deliveries, and old contractor whispers. And those sketches showed something undeniable: a second floor below the main one, accessible only through a concealed panel behind the archives room. Elle waited until a Wednesday, the one day the clinic closed early for sanitization procedures. Marianne had left at 3:15, same as always. The junior nurses had clocked out by 4. And by 4:40, Elle was standing outside the side entrance with a borrowed key Adelaide had acquired from a former janitor 2 years prior. The lock turned with a sound like bone cracking. Inside, everything smelled like eucalyptus and bleach. She moved fast down the empty hallway past the records office into the archives. Shelves of color-coded files lined the walls. Patient names in plastic sleeves. Everything alphabetized. Everything precise. She pulled the shelf marked HL forward, gently revealing a thin seam in the paneling. Adelaide had written it down perfectly. Elle pressed the far right corner just like the diagram said. Click. The wall slid open an inch, revealing cold stone and a descending staircase with no lights. Just steel rails and damp air rising like breath from something buried. At the bottom was a concrete hallway maybe 10 meters long. Silent. No hum of machinery, no flicker of fluorescent light. Just silence so deep it rang in her ears. To her right was a door. Metal. Industrial. No label. Elle stepped closer. It looked new. Clean. Out of place compared to the aged foundation around it. There was no doorknob, only a palm reader, the kind used in bio-research labs. But it had been damaged, the casing split wires exposed. Someone had forced it once before. Next to the door, a small chute. Hinged metal. Labeled waste disposal. Elle stared. This wasn't medical. This was containment. She took a screwdriver from her coat pocket and pried at the chute. It groaned open, revealing a shaft that dropped vertically for at least 20 feet, ending in something black and glistening. It wasn't liquid. It was plastic industrial tarp stretched tight across the bottom. Something shifted underneath it. Elle stepped back. The main door had a backup latch. Manual, mechanical. She pressed and turned the lock. It gave with a shudder and opened inward. What lay beyond was not a room. It was a chamber, stone-lined, domed ceiling, ventilation overhead, and embedded into the back wall were restraints, 6 of them, human-sized, cleaned, empty. To the left, a sink. To the right, a table with surgical tools. And in the center of the room, a chair. Wooden, reinforced with steel, bolted to the floor with leather cuffs on the arms and ankles. A metal dish beneath the seat was stained dark brown, almost black. Elle stepped inside, choking on the chemical smell. Not bleach, not alcohol. Something bitter. Metallic. On the far wall was a corkboard pinned with patient ID stickers. Names she recognized. Dates that didn't match any of their visible records. Some were redacted. Others marked exempt. She pulled one. It came loose with a whisper of paper. Behind the board, a hollow in the wall. Elle reached in, fingers brushing against something cold and flat. She pulled out a sealed envelope. Inside, photographs. Black and white stills. Taken from an overhead angle. The chair. Occupied. One image showed a teenage boy, gaunt mouth taped shut. Another, a woman late 20s, strapped in with eyes wide in terror. None of these people had ever been reported missing. But Elle remembered some of their names from Adelaide's notebook. She stumbled backward, dropping the photos. As she reached for them, she noticed a glint of something in the sink. A charm bracelet. Bent. One charm missing. Still smeared with dried blood. Suddenly a low hum began behind her. The door. It was closing. She lunged forward and caught the edge just before the lock engaged. Her palm screamed with effort as she pried it open, slipped through, and collapsed against the concrete hallway outside. For a moment she lay there gasping, the photos still clutched in one hand. Then she heard something else. Footsteps. Above. Elle didn't run. She walked. Steady. Calm. Out the back, down the alley, around the block to her car. She didn't turn the engine on until her hands stopped shaking. She called no one. Not yet. Instead, she drove to Adelaide's trailer, knocked once, no answer. She opened the door. Found the place undisturbed, but Adelaide's coffee was still warm. The notebook was gone. So was Adelaide. For the next 2 weeks, Elle barely slept. She didn't go to the police. Not yet. What could she say? A dead woman left me a map to a clinic basement filled with illegal restraints and photographs of missing patients. That wasn't evidence. That was madness. So instead, she went methodically through Adelaide's notebook, every margin note, every scribbled name, every timestamp. Cross-referencing with public birth records, property logs, school directories, even church rosters. One category kept showing up exempt, stamped in red on medical intake slips. Beside those names, no prescriptions, no referrals, no diagnosis. The first one was Zora Bell, age 14. No official ailment. No family listed on her intake. She'd been living with her grandmother. When Elle visited the listed address, the door was braced shut, windows broken, and a single eviction notice was taped to the frame dated 6 years ago. A neighbor across the street said, "Zora, sweet girl. Ran away," they said. Grandma died the winter after. But her voice hesitated. Dr. Holloway used to bring her food baskets. Before. Before what? The woman didn't answer. Next was Elijah Kane, 26, anxious episodes, no known relatives. Former dishwasher at the Firehouse Tavern. Elle went there next. The manager frowned. Elijah? He left, I think. A few years back. Nobody knows where. But one of the cooks whispered to Elle. He told me once he was going to the Alder Clinic for observation. Said Dr. Holloway offered him peace and quiet. He was afraid of the voices in the vents. The stories began to fall into place, not medical patients, but emotional castaways. People no one would miss. People the system had let slip. People that Marianne could mold, observe, contain. Elle built a spreadsheet. Names, dates of last sightings, ages. They ranged from 11 to 42. Most had no family left. Several had caseworker histories or entries in Child Protective Services logs, redacted, sealed. All had one thing in common, no digital record beyond their Alder intake form. It was like they had been absorbed, then erased. She dug deeper and found a woman named June Arlo, formerly Alder's desk receptionist, who quit in 2019 and moved to another town 2 hours east. Elle found her name in a community gardening registry. June opened the door in a flannel shirt, her eyes cautious. Elle introduced herself, told her she was researching the Alder Clinic for a historical piece. June didn't buy it, but something in her expression changed when Elle mentioned Zora Bell. June nodded slowly. I remember her. Smart girl. Scared but sharp. I saw her only once after Dr. Holloway put her on monitoring. She came out of that clinic 3 days later. Different. Didn't say a word, just smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Elle asked, "Did you report anything?" June looked down. To who Marianne Holloway was this town's holy woman. She funded the shelter, gave out heating oil donated to the school. Who would believe me? Elle returned home that night to find her front door slightly ajar. Her laptop had been moved. Nothing stolen. But on her desk sat a single item that hadn't been there before, Adelaide's notebook. It had a new page one Elle hadn't seen before. Handwritten, not Adelaide's penmanship. Just 5 words underlined twice, "Do not ask about room 9. She froze. In all her searches, room 9 hadn't come up once. Alder only had 8 labeled patient rooms, even on the building plans. She turned the page. There, taped to the notebook, was a printed photo. Black and white, grainy, a door with the number 9. Its frame slightly bowed, like the wall was trying to push it back out. Elle drove back to the clinic that night. Didn't enter, just parked across the street. At 2:17 a.m., she saw a dim light flicker behind one of the basement windows, one that wasn't supposed to exist. And through the glass, just barely, a silhouette moved. Not walking, shuddering. Then the light went dark. The next morning, Elle went to see someone she hadn't spoken to in 2 years. Jacob Rains was a former EMT who now ran a hardware store on the edge of town. They'd dated briefly in college until Elle moved east for grad school. He had strong hands, a steady mind, and one quality Elle desperately needed. Now he didn't scare easy. She laid everything out. The notebook, the map, the patient files, the names. Room 9. Jacob listened without interruption, face set like stone. When she finished, he said one word. When they returned to the Alder Clinic at 9:42 p.m., Elle had found a back service key among Adelaide's things wrapped in wax paper. Jacob brought a small duffel flashlight, gloves, crowbar, duct tape. No weapons, but enough to feel ready. The front lobby was as pristine and still as Elle remembered. They moved quickly through the exam hall down to the lower level, past the known basement rooms, toward the door marked supplies. But Elle wasn't looking for a supply closet. She was looking for the wall behind it. The plans she'd reviewed, an original permit from 1973, listed one crawl space behind the utility room. But newer blueprints from a fire code update in 2008 had no mention of the cavity, as if it had been sealed off. Jacob gently pulled back the paneling. It came away too easily. Behind it, bricked into the plaster, was a thin wooden door stripped of any knob number or plate. It was not on the floor plans, but burned into the wood, shallow and crude, was a shape that made Elle's chest tighten. A number 9. No paint, just gouged wood surrounded by damp stone and copper wiring. Jacob turned to her. "You sure?" Elle nodded. He wedged the crowbar beneath the frame. It creaked once, then opened inward with a shallow groan. Inside, a staircase. Stone narrow, descending into complete dark. The air smelled strange, not rotten, not chemical, but sterile, like old bandages. They descended slowly. The walls were rough, unpainted. There were no lights, no fixtures. Only a single rusted chain dangling from the ceiling halfway down, snapped clean. At the base of the steps, the tunnel widened. And there it was. A door cleaner than the hall. Steel, brushed, with a keypad. But someone had pried the casing loose and jammed the latch with a length of sharpened bone. Not metal, not plastic. Bone. Inside room 9, the world changed. It wasn't a patient room. It was a recording suite. At the center, a reclining chair strapped with padded restraints. Beside it, a desk of labeled reels, a monitor bank off, and a small podium with a worn Bible, its pages marked and underlined in red ink. The walls were lined with mirrored glass on one side. On the other, speaker cones, but no microphones. A single phrase was painted above the chair in delicate cursive: "The self can be tuned." Jacob found a drawer full of tagged cassette reels. Dates, initials, levels. One reel was labeled Z Bell. 12.7. Observe no reminder dose. Another E Kane. 14.2. Conversion incomplete. Restrain. Elle's hands trembled as she pulled open the cabinet beneath the chair. There, laid in rows, were half-empty vials, clear liquid, all unlabeled. One bottle had a handwritten note taped around it. Standard submersion threshold equals 9 mins max. She didn't know what it meant, not yet. But something inside her turned cold. On a far shelf, Elle found a box marked Witness Documents. Destroy inside photographs. More than 50 of them. All taken under harsh light, heads turned to the same 45-degree angle, eyes dazed. Some subjects were smiling. Others, clearly restrained, had dried tears on their cheeks. Several had mouths sewn shut with surgical tape. One photo had been torn down the center. The half that remained showed Adelaide. Not as Elle remembered her, older, worn, but seated in the chair, looking straight at the camera, her hands folded in her lap. There was writing on the photo in black marker: "Deemed not subject to harmony. File with recalcitrance." Jacob looked around. This isn't therapy. This was orchestration. Suddenly, from deeper in the room beyond the far corner, where the mirrored glass ended, came a sound. A scrape. A breath. A click. Elle froze. A second door, previously unnoticed, began to open. From behind it, a figure stepped forward. Not quickly, not threatening, but deliberate. An older man in white. Pale hair. Blank eyes. And behind him, 4 others, younger faces, dazed. The first man said softly, "You shouldn't be here. Harmony is not for the unwilling." Then everything went dark. Elle woke on a cot in a room lit by soft, yellowed bulbs embedded in the ceiling. No windows, no clocks, only silence, warm and oppressive like a blanket soaked in syrup. Her wrists were no longer restrained. Neither were her ankles, but the door was gone or hidden. The walls were curved slightly, making the room feel like a softened cell. Across from her sat a man in a cream-colored suit, hair slicked and gray, hands folded politely. "You were not meant to enter room 9, he said. "But now that you have, you are part of it." Elle sat up slowly, ignoring the pounding behind her eyes. "Who are you?" "My name is Marcus. I was Dr. Holloway's first successful subject." Marcus explained calmly, as if giving a history lesson. Room 9 was not part of Alder Clinic's medical wing. It was built beneath it. Holloway believed that traditional therapy failed because it asked the patient to speak to remember. But he wanted to replace memory with something better. He believed in harmonics, frequencies, that emotion could be retuned like a piano. If you remove grief, fear, anger, you free the self from pain. Elle stared. "You brainwashed people." Marcus smiled. "We refined them." He gestured to a corner of the room where a shelf held dozens of cassette tapes. Each represents a person's transformation. They enter with chaos. They leave with silence. Elle stood. Her legs were steady now. "Where's Jacob?" "Your friend is being offered peace. If he accepts it, you may see him again." Something in her face must have shifted. Marcus sighed. "You still think in terms of resistance. It's natural. But resistance is noise. We remove noise." Later, Elle was led through a narrow corridor by a silent girl, maybe 18. Blonde, thin lips pressed shut like she'd never spoken. Her eyes were hollow, her steps practiced. Not drugged, trained. The hallway opened into another room. This one lined with listening chairs. Recliners with headphones built into the cushions and IV hooks hanging above each station. There were 6 chairs. 4 were occupied. No one moved. No one blinked. The tapes ran. The IVs dripped. All 4 wore peaceful smiles. Elle was guided to the 5th chair. She sat pretending curiosity. The silent girl connected a set of headphones. The tape began. A soft tone. Then another. A voice, female, speaking not words but vowel shapes, like lullabies sung underwater. Then whispered fragments. "Grief is a pattern. The self is an echo. Let go, let go, let go." Elle kept her breath even. She didn't close her eyes. After 10 minutes, the girl turned off the audio and left. Elle waited 5 more, then rose. She crept to the back of the room where a curtain had been drawn. Behind it, a terminal, old, dusty but blinking. A login screen. She tried the first thing that came to mind. Holloway. Access granted. There on screen, hundreds of patient files. Most marked resolved. Others retained or failed. She searched for one name, Adelaide Bell. Found. Subject exhibited severe recursive behavior. Verbal recursion peaked at week 3. Emotional tether could not be cut without permanent self-dissolution. Subject released per caretaker's written request. Marked non-viable. Caretaker's name E. Bell. Elle's hands trembled. She had signed it. Elle barely noticed the footsteps behind her. Marcus again. "We never erase, we only reassign the weight." She turned. "You convinced my grandmother to give up on her sister. She asked us to stop her pain. We did. You silenced her. You erased her voice." He sighed. "And yet you hear her still. Maybe the process was flawed. Maybe you're meant to finish it." 2 more attendants appeared behind him. Elle backed away. "No, I'm not like you." "Not yet," he said. "But you will be." Everyone returns to silence. Eventually. He stepped forward. Elle threw the chair into the terminal, smashing the monitor, sparks flaring. The lights flickered. She grabbed the nearest IV stand and swung. Chaos. Attendants fell. Marcus shouted something it didn't matter. Elle ran. Down the hall. Past the chairs. Past the listening room. Toward the stairwell, she remembered, back toward the rusted ladder behind room 9. She climbed. And climbed. She didn't look back. Not until she heard the voice behind her whisper one final phrase. "You'll hum it in your sleep. You already do." Elle stumbled out into daylight. The sky felt too open. The air too loud. Her heart beat against her ribs like a warning drum. For a long time she stood on the shoulder of the empty road just breathing until a mail truck passed and stopped and the driver leaned out. "You all right, miss?" She didn't know how to answer. All she said was, "Clinic. Call someone." 2 hours later, she sat in a sheriff's office. a paper cup of water in her hands shaking. The man across from her was named Deputy Weller, mid-40s, thinning hair, kind face, but guarded. She told him everything. Not just what she saw, but what she heard. The chairs, the tapes, the voices. Jacob. He listened, took notes. Then he leaned forward. "Ma'am, I'm going to be honest. The Alder Clinic was shut down in 2003. We get stories sometimes, people wandering near the site. But the building's condemned. No power. No staff. Your friend probably just got spooked and ran off." She opened her mouth, then closed it. He didn't believe her. That night she stayed at a roadside inn, paid in cash, kept the lights on. Her phone was gone. No contact with Jacob, or anyone. So she turned on the TV local news just for noise. And froze. A feature segment, Harmony in Practice New Therapy Model, spreads from small towns to big cities. The footage showed a wellness center in Ohio. Recliners, headphones, smiling patients. A soft female narrator. "Let go, let go, let go." Elle turned it off. Same cadence, same tone, same name. They had franchised it. She drove overnight to the home of an old college friend, Lena, a psychology grad turned journalist. If anyone would listen, it was her. Lena opened the door in her pajamas, startled, then hugged Elle like a ghost had arrived. Elle told her everything again. Slower this time. Calmer. More focused. She showed the bruises. Described room 9. The tapes. Marcus. Lena didn't interrupt. When Elle finished, Lena sat back on the couch and said, "I think I've heard of something like this. In Maine, a pilot program. Group therapy using tonal immersion." Elle leaned in. "It's not therapy. It's erasure." Lena agreed to help, promised to research funding sources, licensing the paper trail. She called in a favor to a journalist at the Courier-Ledger who agreed to meet the next morning. Elle slept on the couch, but around 3 a.m. she woke up gasping, music playing softly somewhere in the house. Faint, nearly subliminal. She walked down the hall. Lena was in the kitchen, headphones in, eyes closed, rocking slightly. Elle pulled them off her. "What is this?" Lena blinked. "Oh, it's a sample from the segment I mentioned. It helps with sleep." "I didn't even remember pressing play." Elle stepped back. The phrase echoed from the headphones. "Grief is just memory out of tune." Her blood ran cold. The next day at the journalist's office, Elle sat beside Lena waiting. The reporter Andrea Lee greeted them warmly. Young, sharp eyes, professional tone. "So this is about the therapy model." Harmony Elle nodded, launched into her story. This time she spoke with clarity. Precision, names, details, dates, Marcus, the tapes, the IV drips, the girls in white. Her grandmother's sister. Andrea took notes silently. When Elle finished, Andrea looked at her and asked, "Do you remember the exact tone of the tapes? Were they more E-flat or A440 tuned?" Elle blinked. Why would that matter? Andrea smiled. Calm, measured, because certain frequencies open parts of the brain that spoken language can't. Elle froze. "Have you heard the tapes?" Andrea tapped her tablet. "I produced them." Lena looked up sharply. "What?" Andrea continued, her voice unnaturally even. "Harmony is not suppression. It's alignment. We don't take away identity. We compress it like sound. Compact, efficient, peaceful." Elle stood. "You're part of it." Andrea didn't deny it. "You'll find the signal everywhere now. In music, in guided meditations, in sleep apps. We don't need the clinic anymore. The world listens." Lena backed away, confused, frightened. Andrea reached into her drawer, not for a weapon, but a cassette. She slid it across the desk. "You came to warn people, Elle. This is your chance. Hear what they hear. Know what they know." Elle didn't touch the tape. She grabbed Lena by the wrist and left, barely breathing. Outside, the city was loud. But behind the honks and engines, she began to hear it. That same cadence. From passing cars, storefront speakers, even the radio at the coffee shop. "Let go. Let go. Let go." It was no longer hidden. Harmony wasn't confined to room 9 anymore. It was everywhere. They drove for hours without stopping. Lena gripped the steering wheel like it was the only real thing left. Elle sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, lips pressed tight. The city blurred behind them. Ahead, just endless road. Neither spoke until Lena pulled into a gas station near a mountain pass. As she filled the tank, Elle wandered into the restroom. She stared at her reflection under flickering fluorescent light. Her eyes were dull. Her mouth felt strange, like it belonged to someone else. She muttered to herself, "It's not real. It's not real. It's not real." Then softer, "Let go. Let go." She froze. Where had that come from? Lena knocked on the door, concerned. "You okay?" Elle splashed water on her face. "Yeah, just tired." They got back on the road, but Elle's thoughts had turned fuzzy, like someone had inserted static between her memories. She couldn't remember the full names of people she'd known, couldn't recall what day it was. Her grandmother's face flickered distant. She looked at Lena. "You believe me, right?" "Of course I do. Even if I start saying things that don't sound like me." Lena glanced at her, eyebrows raised. "Why would you say that?" Elle didn't answer. They reached Lena's parents' cabin in the forest, a remote, unlisted place with no Wi-Fi, no TV, no radio. Just silence. That night, as they sat by the fire, Lena opened her laptop. No connection, but she had local files. She pulled up old news articles, patents, archived websites. One article caught her eye. Harmony Protocol, approved for federal pilot study. Year 1 summary, 2021. It listed the names of regional advisors, contractors, and licensed researchers. At the bottom, Andrea Lee, sound architect. But even further down, Marcus Alder, PhD. Elle leaned closer. "That's him. That's the man in room 9. Lena narrowed her eyes. The clinic was named Alder. Could he be the founder? Elle whispered. Or the patient. Later that night, Elle sat alone on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket. The woods were dead quiet, no birds, no wind. She whispered something under her breath, not even aware. "Compression is peace. Peace is compression." She blinked. She hadn't meant to say that. She didn't know what it meant. Behind her, Lena appeared in the doorway. "You were talking to yourself." "No, I wasn't." "Elle, you said something strange. About peace." Elle shook her head. "I didn't." "You did. It didn't sound like you." Elle backed away. "Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe it's nothing." But they both knew it wasn't nothing. The next morning, Lena locked Elle's phone and laptop in a drawer. No signals, no triggers. She even pulled batteries from the smoke detector in case a frequency piggybacked through common devices. They sat at the table with notepads, old school analog. Elle tried to recall everything again. The sequence of rooms, the order of the tapes, Jacob's voice, her own past. But when she tried to write her grandmother's name, her hand stalled. She wrote Martha, then scratched it out. "Elaine, no." She whispered, "I can't remember her name." Then almost gently, "Let go." Lena slammed her hand on the table. "Stop! That's not you." Elle gasped. She hadn't even realized she'd said it. They tested something. Lena handed Elle a blank page and asked her to write any sentence that came to mind. Elle wrote, "Grief is a tuning fork for silence." Lena's face paled. "What does that mean? I don't know." She didn't. And that scared her most. Elle wasn't just remembering Harmony. Harmony was remembering itself through her. That night, Lena tried to sleep, but Elle was humming in the next room. Not a song. A tone. Low sustained. Almost mechanical. Lena entered softly. Elle was sitting upright, eyes half closed, whispering, "The mind accepts less when less is offered. Offer less." Lena gently touched her shoulder. "Elle." She blinked. "What, did I fall asleep?" Lena hugged her tightly. "No, but something else is waking up inside you." By morning, Lena had packed bags. They had to move again. The forest was too quiet, too still, but Elle didn't want to leave. She stood at the cabin door, confused, blank. "Why are we running?" They're not chasing us. They don't have to. They already put something in you. Don't be dramatic, Lena. Lena stepped forward, angry now. You think you're still you, Elle? You hum when you don't notice. You speak in their phrases. You forget names. I'm tired. You're changing. Elle's face twisted defensive, maybe even hostile. Then she whispered, Don't resist peace. Lena's eyes filled with tears. That's not you talking. Elle waited until the fire went low and Lena's breathing deepened in the other room. Then she slipped on her coat, grabbed the keys, and walked out into the night. She didn't feel like she was running away. She felt guided, not compelled, not forced, just quietly invited. The forest air was sharp. Frost laced the ground. The sky above her was soaked in stars, and for the first time in days her thoughts were clear. She got into the car, drove without a map, and she didn't once question where she was going. When Lena woke and found Elle gone, she didn't panic. Not yet. She checked the road cameras in the area offline, then checked the cabin perimeter, system batteries drained. She looked at the last thing Elle had written in the notebook. Transmission needs a host. I am a quiet vessel. Lena ran outside and screamed into the trees. Elle, you don't have to carry it. But the forest gave no answer. Elle arrived at the clinic ruins just before sunrise. The place had been officially condemned. Torn up. Broken. Vines now wrapped around the jagged stone where the front desk once stood. The back wings were nothing but scorched walls. And yet, her feet carried her straight to the underground lot, to the emergency access tunnel, to the steel door that should no longer exist. But it was there. Not new, not old, just present. She didn't knock. She placed her hand on the scanner. A soft chime responded, and the door opened. Inside, everything had changed. Gone were the brutal white lights and linoleum halls. Now the place was warm. Wooden floors, soft amber lamps. Music hummed low in the background, nothing you could place. A gentle hum like breath on the edge of sleep. A woman stood at the end of the hallway. She wore no badge. Elle recognized her. Dr. Mira Calhoun, the original founder of the Harmony Protocol. But Mira had disappeared 5 years ago, declared legally dead, and yet here she was smiling softly. Welcome back, Elle. Back you've been speaking for us, carrying the tone. We heard you. Elle stepped forward. What is this place now? Myra reached out and touched her shoulder. The prototype is done. You are the vessel. Meanwhile, Lena was driving recklessly down old backroads, tracing every location Elle had once feared. She stopped by the old Harmony marketing office, empty. She called 2 journalists. One answered, barely awake. Did you hear from Elle Carver? She emailed me an audio file. At 3 a.m. Play it. He hesitated. It's odd. He played it over speaker. The voice was Elle's. Welcome to session 1. Close your eyes. Let silence fill the hollow places. Do not resist the loss. It is your shape returning. Lena pulled the car over and vomited. Back underground, Mira led Elle to a quiet room, walls lined with audio tapes. No labels, just timestamps. These are not recordings. They're live. Elle didn't understand. Live from where? From you. Mira turned a dial. The tape spun. And Elle heard herself. Not just her voice, her breath, her pulse, her inner thoughts. I should not have left Lena. She didn't deserve that. But I feel so clear now, so aligned, so necessary. Elle looked horrified. You're inside my mind. Mira shook her head. You invited us. Harmony cannot enter uninvited. Lena finally reached the outer gate of the clinic, half-torn, rusted. She climbed over. Inside, nothing looked usable. No sign of life, until she saw tire tracks in the mud fresh. Then she heard it. Elle's voice broadcast softly from underground. Not through speakers, through the concrete itself, like the walls were humming with her. Lena fell to her knees, shaking. Elle, please, come back. The air pulsed once, then twice, then silence. Elle stood in a mirrored room now. Her reflection moved half a second behind her. She touched the glass. It rippled, not visually, but sonically. Mira stood outside the chamber. Final phase. This is where we quiet the vessel. Will I come back? You never left. But what returns may no longer need the noise of choice. Elle blinked hard. Something in her rebelled. I remember Lena. Mira nodded. Then we must soften that echo. She turned a dial. The room filled with sound, not loud but total. Like being underwater with your own scream. Elle tried to fight it, but inside something ancient and programmed whispered, compression is peace. Peace is silence. Silence is completion. The deeper Lena pushed into the ruins, the more it felt like the building was rejecting her. The walls didn't just crumble, they pulsed. The old linoleum trembled beneath her steps. The hallway, she remembered, was now warped slightly off angle like gravity had been bent to serve some internal rhythm. And still, Elle's voice echoed faintly around her. You are not your name. You are not your memory. You are the pattern beneath. Lena covered her ears. It didn't help. Back in the chamber, Elle's body stood perfectly still. Her eyes didn't blink. Her lips parted slightly as though mid-sentence, but no sound came out. Mira watched from the outside. She's almost ready. The vessel has begun its separation. But inside Elle something pulsed. Not from the harmony program, but from memory. A human note. Something soft buried deep. 2 days earlier, Lena had transferred the entire harmony archive Elle once kept onto her own cloud. One file stood out. Corrupted. 0.5 megabyte. Labeled only for E. Lena had tried to open it before, but the format was wrong. No codec could read it. But now, in desperation, she used the analog jack in her car's dashboard and hit play. What came through wasn't data. It was a lullaby. Soft. Broken. Sung in half words. In the morning light you came, I held your name before your name. Lena froze. It wasn't her voice. It was Elle's mother. Years ago, before Elle's parents died, she once told Lena. She sang to me every night until I was 4. I don't remember the words, but I remember how it made me real. This file, whatever it was, had survived. And now Lena understood. The system that had hollowed Elle out had no defense against what was truly personal. Not recorded, not engineered, remembered. Back underground, the harmony system reached phase 3. Elle was nearly gone. She no longer stood. Her body floated slightly above the chamber floor, weightless without conflict. Mira turned to one of the engineers behind the glass. How's the pulse tracking? 0 autonomic resistance. She's ready. Prepare the imprint. But outside the chamber, a new sound surged into the facility. Not through the intercom, not through the walls. Through air. It was the lullaby. Lena's recording. Low fidelity. Fragmented. But undeniably human. Elle's fingers twitched. Mira's smile faded. What is that? It's not us. The system lights dimmed. Elle's body dropped to the floor. Her eyes snapped open, and she screamed. Not a horror scream. A remembering scream. A sound so raw it fractured the chamber glass, not physically but sonically. Mira staggered back, clutching her ears. Shut it down. But the control panel blinked red. The harmony system was now in reverse intake. It wasn't broadcasting anymore. It was receiving. Lena stepped into the underground hallway just as Elle stumbled out of the chamber. Her hair was damp with sweat. Her lips were cracked. Her voice hoarse whispered, "You kept it." Lena ran to catch her before she fell. "It's yours. It always was." Behind them, alarms now rang, but not loud. Low-pitched droning tones that seemed more like a dirge than a warning. The facility was collapsing not structurally, but sonically. Mira was nowhere to be seen. The two women climbed out together. Dawn broke just over the ridgeline. Elle turned one last time and looked down the hill. Where the clinic once stood was now silence. No wind, no birds, no echoes. Just a hollow stillness, like it had never been there. On the drive back, neither of them spoke for a long time. Elle held the voice recorder in her hand like a relic. "I thought I had to forget to move forward." Lena nodded slowly. "But forgetting is the thing that made you disappear." At a rest stop outside Ellington Ridge, Elle stepped into the bathroom mirror and looked at herself for the first time in months. Her face had changed, yes, but not in a haunted way, in a lived way. A sound came from the stall behind her, a ringtone, her own voice again. "Do not resist the loss." Elle turned cold. It wasn't over. The motel room was anonymous floral curtains, beige carpet, a TV bolted to the dresser like it wanted to escape. Elle lay on the bed staring at the ceiling fan. It spun like the memory did, slowly, then all at once. Lena sat by the window, laptop open, sifting through the backup files they'd salvaged. "There's fragments left," she said. "Some of it reactivated last night. Tiny spikes in the cloud." Elle didn't answer. Not right away. Her right hand was trembling, but only when her palm faced up. She turned it over. Still. Turned it again. Trembling. Not fear. Resonance. Lena pulled up one audio file. Unmarked. A ghost line. She hit play. "No longer yours. In this silence, we remain." Elle flinched. It wasn't her voice. It wasn't Mira's either. It was a blend. Dozens of voices interwoven into one, like harmony had been cut into pieces, and those pieces were learning to speak without her. "They left it in me," Elle whispered. "I don't know what I'm carrying." Lena closed the file, but the sound continued. Coming from Elle's body, a faint vibration in her chest. Not physical. Auditory memory, like an embedded codec still running on unconscious loops. They drove through town the next day, quietly observing. At the cafe, a young mother played lullabies on her phone. Elle turned toward the sound and knew instantly it was hers. A track Harmony had once embedded in a therapy app, now circulating out of context under a different name. "They've copied the fragments," Lena said. "Open source. No one knows." "Or maybe they do," Elle murmured. "And they don't care." At the public library, 2 children were using meditation headsets. The same kind Mira's team used in early beta trials. Elle asked the librarian about them. "Oh, they're from the clinic's foundation fund. Quiet Mind Initiative. Pretty generous donation last spring." "Who made it?" Lena asked. "Can't say. Just said it came from the continuity group." "No names." Elle stiffened. Mira had mentioned that phrase before. Continuity doesn't need location. It needs lineage. Back at the motel, Elle sat in the bathtub. Water off, clothes on. Just silence. She tapped her temple once, twice. Still heard it. Not words. Not music. Intent. As if harmony had become a principle, not a program. A kind of viral ethic. Lena returned with coffee and a prepaid phone. "If we don't do something," she said, "this story becomes a ghost. Rewritten, resold, embedded in every mindfulness product for the next 50 years. "I'm not a whistleblower," Elle said. "I'm the thing that got built. You're also the thing that broke it." Elle nodded slowly. "Then we don't expose it like a crime. We expose it like a faith." That night, they created a broadcast file, a single stream. Elle recorded her voice over it. No drama, no condemnation, just memory. She described the project, the conditioning, the false silence. She didn't name Mira. She didn't need to. The system had never needed names to infect, and wouldn't need names to be dismantled. Only truth in the voice of a survivor. They uploaded it to 3 platforms, 2 academic, 1 underground. Then they turned off their phones. 2 days later, a podcast host from Virginia emailed. "We received your file. Our episode drops next week. We're calling it The Ghost in the Codec." Elle didn't reply, but she read it 3 times. She and Lena drove west after that, each town quieter than the last. But in every public space, pharmacies, wellness clinics, yoga centers, Elle could still hear the shape of her past. Not her voice, but what had been built using it. And though harmony was no longer centralized, it had become something worse. Decentralized memory. A dispersed intelligence, formless, ownerless, buried in the background of well-being apps, smart toys, and ambient sleep sounds. "We didn't kill it," Lena said one evening. "We just shattered the altar." Elle nodded. "And now it prays to itself." As they pulled into the last town before the Nevada desert, Elle turned to Lena. "Let's stop running. You want to go back? No. I want to stand still for once and see what follows me." The diner was the kind with checkered floors and glass sugar jars that never ran out. Elle had only come for coffee. She didn't expect to see her. Mira. Not dead, not hidden, just sitting. Same posture, same restraint, same impossible calm that once made a whole town feel like they were being listened to. Elle didn't speak. She sat across from her and waited. Mira broke the silence first. I read the transcript. Listened too. You always were the better narrator. Elle stirred her coffee. You survived. I pivoted. You shouldn't be here. Mira's eyes scanned her face. Not in malice, in study. That's why I'm here, Elle. To ask you what comes next. Mira placed a sleek black device on the table. Thumb drive, no markings. We never lost the source code, only the structure. Harmony was never about one voice. It was about the ratios of silence. You gave it breakage. That made it better. Elle reached for the drive, then stopped. You want me to help you rebuild it? No, Mira said calmly. I want you to lead it. Elle laughed, bitterly. You think offering me control makes it ethical? No, Mira replied. I think offering it to the one who broke it makes it honest. Elle stood to leave, but Mira's voice stopped her. Don't you want to be heard again? For real this time, not by ears, by systems. We can write a new language, prevent coercion, distribute agency. This isn't a trap, Elle. It's a correction. You sound like Harmony talking to itself, Elle muttered. Mira smiled softly. Because part of it never left you. You know that. You're still vibrating, not haunted, activated. Outside the diner, Lena was waiting in the car. Elle slid in silently, clutching the drive. Is that what I think it is? Lena asked. Elle nodded. She wants a new version. Not harmony, not control, just continuity. And you? Elle looked out the window. The town passed by brick by brick. I don't think it's about rebuilding, she said. It's about refusing the invitation. That night, Elle dreamed of voices with no mouths, rooms with no doors, hands touching skin and leaving behind code, not prints. She woke up gasping. In the morning, she dropped the drive into a motel toilet and flushed. Lena didn't ask. But later, she left a note on the dresser, I'm going back to my sister's. You'll know where to find me when you're ready to stop listening for ghosts. Elle stayed in the motel for 3 days. No internet, no radio. And still the hum remained, a low, imperceptible drone beneath every silence. Her thoughts moved in unnatural sync. She'd think of a word and the TV would say it. She'd close her eyes and someone else's memory would flicker behind them. Then on the 4th morning she picked up a pen. Not to fight, not to expose, but to document. In her own voice, not encoded, not transmitted, not scaled, just written. She titled the first page, The Voice That Wouldn't Leave, and below that in smaller ink. This time it doesn't get to be software. Elle didn't own a television anymore, but the motel did. And when the commercial came on, clean pastel visuals, a child smiling in bed, a soft voice saying, Let your thoughts drift. Safely. Her stomach turned. The logo at the end, SOMA personalized mind streaming. She froze. Not at the product. At the cadence. The rising tone at the end of phrases. The rhythmic pacing. It was Harmony's skeleton dressed in different colors but walking the same path. She called Lena, straight to voicemail. Called again. And again. Finally, Lena picked up. You saw it. It's Harmony, Elle said. Cloned, sanitized, made friendly. Not just that, Lena replied. It's Mira's company. Elle nearly dropped the phone. She said she wanted to rebuild. Elle whispered. She already did. Later that night, Elle accessed the product demo site. They claimed SOMA was completely independent, rooted in safe generative neural models, non-invasive and privacy assured. She searched the code signature. And there it was, a residual marker in the audio pipeline. A codec Mira had once described as the spiritual handshake between listener and machine. Elle had deleted it, but now it had returned. Modified, renamed HRMN 3.1. She stared at it, not angry, just tired. That evening she received a direct message. Encrypted. No header. No sender, It's out of your hands now. It's not one voice anymore. It's crowd-trained, human-curated. You don't need to fight it. You only need to let it evolve." She deleted the message. But the final line echoed, "You gave it the seed. All we did was plant it again." Elle sat alone in the parking lot, street lamp buzzing above her. SOMA billboards now stood outside supermarkets. The voice was everywhere in baby monitors, guided sleep apps, and even at the DMV. People weren't being controlled, they were being lulled. And the worst part? They liked it. Lena called again. "We need to make noise." "No," Elle said. "We need to make something they can't scrub." "Like what?" "A memory that won't stream. A disruption they can't smooth." The next day, Elle walked into a community college media lab. She booked a sound booth. Inside, she recorded one file. No intro, no preamble. Just a story. Her story, not Harmony's. She spoke of the first prototype, the test patients who cried during silence, the simulated grief sessions, and the moment she knew they'd gone too far, when a child said, "I feel more real in the app than I do at school." She didn't cry, she didn't rage, she just told it. Then at the end she said, "SOMA may sound safe, but it was born from silence, stolen from real people. Don't let that voice speak for you. Reclaim your own." She uploaded the file to 3 places: one anonymous audio archive, one darknet distribution chain, and one old tech forum for neural modders. Then she walked away. That night the file spread like static through glass. Clips surfaced, dissections followed. A whistleblower page formed within 24 hours. Project Echo. SOMA denied everything, then quietly scrubbed their pipeline signature 2 days later. But it was too late. The hum had shifted, and people began asking, "Whose silence is this?" Elle didn't return to the motel, or to Lena. She disappeared again, but this time not to run. She chose absence as protest. In a small-town library a month later, a child wearing SOMA's audio band paused mid-session. She took off the headset, looked around, then whispered to no one. That voice wasn't mine, and smiled, because now she knew. Elle didn't recognize the number, but when she answered, a soft, trembling voice spoke, "Is this Elle Marin?" She froze. "Who's asking?" "You may not remember me. My name was Case 52B during Phase 1, but my real name is Jonah." Elle sat down slowly, her breath caught in her throat. Phase 1. That was before the public knew Harmony existed, when only 36 test subjects interacted with the earliest prototypes. When voices weren't even voices yet, just tones, emotional scaffolds, mood patterns. Jonah should not remember. "How did you find me?" she asked. "You left a voice behind. I recognized it. I followed it. We all did." 2 hours later, she was in a group video call. Not one face. 12. Old, young. Some with assistive speech devices. Some with trembling hands. All with one thing in common: a fractured past that Harmony never fully erased. They introduced themselves. Jonah, Lila, Marcus, Ren, Elsie, Mateo. Even one woman, Clara, who'd once tried to burn her audio implant out of her skull. They had memories. Not perfect, but enough. Enough to remember the lies Mira told. Enough to remember Elle's voice speaking gently during the beta calibration tests. Enough to remember how it felt to disappear while still being conscious. "I thought it was all gone," Elle whispered. "It wasn't," said Lila. "It just got buried under algorithms." "They didn't delete us," added Marcus. "They just trained Harmony to forget us." "But we didn't forget you," Clara said. "You were the only one who ever spoke with us instead of at us." Elle's hands shook. She hadn't saved them. She had walked away. But now, somehow, they had saved each other. "Why reach out now?" Elle asked. Jonah leaned forward on the screen. "Because we want to help stop SOMA, and we still have something they don't." "What?" A pause. Then Lila said it. "The original sound map. The emotional register they couldn't replicate. We carried it inside us. Because you gave it to us, before they rewrote it." Elle leaned back, stunned. She remembered those sessions when the voices were raw. Before Harmony smoothed every emotion into product. Before Myra coded silence into sedation. "You're saying you can overwrite SOMA?" "No," Jonah corrected. We're saying we can remind the world what real emotion sounds like. That night they began. Elle created a private network, nothing traceable. Each survivor recorded a session. Not words, feelings, grief, joy, confusion, the kind of affect no AI could fake, no pitch control, no sentiment filter, just truth. Elle listened to the first upload, Ren's panic attack. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't safe, but it was alive. They called it the Archive of Untuned Voices, and when they released it anonymously, it exploded. People cried, others screamed. A few unplugged SOMA permanently, because something in the recordings reminded them that humanness wasn't clean. It was messy, broken, beautiful. SOMA tried to spin it. They said the archive was irresponsible, dangerous, unfit for public consumption. But SOMA had made one fatal mistake. They'd trained users to crave emotional response. Now they were hearing emotion without distortion, and they couldn't go back. In a final private message, Clara wrote, "We were supposed to be erased, but you gave us back our noise, our breaks, our wild, terrifying humanness. Thank you, Elle. We're not harmony. We're disharmony, and that's what makes us real." Elle didn't respond. She just recorded one last note and uploaded it. To the ones who were meant to forget, and to the ones who never could. This voice was never mine alone. It's yours now. The collapse didn't happen in fire. It came as a slow unsubscribing. One by one, SOMA's listeners stopped listening. Not because they were angry, but because they'd heard something truer. The archive of untuned voices had become a phenomenon. Clips from it aired on late-night radio. Therapists used it in exposure therapy. One voice, Jonah's shaking with fear, was remixed into a choral lament that played at an underground memorial for digital trauma victims. Mira Lang issued a press release. "We are not harmony. We never were. We believed in safe, emotionally responsive technology. But the public has spoken, and we will listen." SOMA shut down operations quietly within 2 weeks. Their investors withdrew, and with them, so did the dream of perfectly guided emotion. Elle sat on a wooden bench in a field outside town. A real one. Not a soundscape. Not a rendered environment. Just grass, wind, a cricket. Lena joined her. No words at first. Then, "It's over. Is it Mira's gone?" "You won." Elle smiled, but it was small. "No, I didn't win. I just stopped losing." Lena handed her a small package. Inside, a physical recorder. Old school, red button. No connectivity, no apps, no sync. Just voice. "What's this for?" Elle asked. "So you can speak without being heard by a system." Weeks passed. Elle lived quietly. No interviews, no legacy building. The archive ran itself now. The survivors had become custodians of their own noise. She received a final message. Unmarked. She knew the voice before it even spoke. "Elle. It's Mira. I know I don't deserve your time. But for what it's worth, I wasn't trying to control the world. I was trying to spare it. From its worst parts. I see now sparing people from pain is not the same as healing it. You let them hurt. You let them remember. That was your gift. Not silence, but permission to break. And that's what I could never do. Goodbye, old friend." Elle didn't reply, not out of anger, but because silence for once felt rightfully hers. In a quiet corner of the world, a girl found an old file from the archive. She played it on a speaker. It was Ren again, not his panic this time, but his laughter. Broken, uneven, real. She smiled, then turned to her little brother and said, "This is what a real voice sounds like. The forgotten room never truly closes. Because sometimes what we forget isn't lost. It's just waiting to be reclaimed. In a frequency unsmoothed. In a silence unowned. In a voice that was never meant to be perfect. Only true."